Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and this episode again is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below the waist grooming. And I can vouch for that, and we will talk more a little bit about that later today in our episode. But getting back to it, we just had one of the most fantastic times in the city, and Derby is now over. So Scott, how'd you feel about how that run for the Roses went 2 weeks ago?
An incredible race that I don't think we'll see anything like again.
No. I think the thing that bothered me most about that is the owner of the horse saying, we don't enter a horse into a race unless we think it's going to win. Bro, you were 90-1 right before the race went off and got bet down to 80-1. There's no shot in hell you thought that horse was going to win the Kentucky Derby when you put it in 90 minutes before the deadline on Friday.
It was clearly a fast horse, though.
Oh, clearly. I mean, that horse ran the race of its life.
I mean, everybody else was running suicide sprints, and he was running, cross country. So
I will give him this. He said that horse got faster at the longer distance. So I'm interested to see in the Preakness here in 2 weeks what will happen. Everyone said going into the Derby, there's no Secretariat or no Justify that's going to come out of this. Could this long distant horse, show up here in 2 weeks? But we'll see. But we'll keep tabs on horse racing throughout the next few months as the Triple Crown progresses.
Yeah, it's spring, so that's kind of part and parcel with what we do here in Kentucky. Bourbon and then horse racing in the spring and the fall.
Yeah.
So
it's that time, and it's the spring distilling season, so everyone's getting ready for their bottled and bonds. They're laying down for 4 years from now, and that'll be exciting in 2026.
Look forward to that.
Look forward to those crops that are being laid down right now. Man, the weather it held off. How about that? That was another thing this weekend. It was amazing, like 60s, 70s, little drizzle here or there, but nothing to write home about.
It wasn't a washout like we were fearing.
No kidding. I'm super thankful because it's been like crappy weather, Derby time, the last few years. That's for sure. And speaking of cross country, your son is becoming quite the long distance racer.
He's the stud in cross country lately. Yeah, he's first grade and running about an 8-minute mile.
Yeah.
And that's a cross country mile. That's not just like a track mile, which to me makes a big difference because he runs in rain, cold, heat, whatever, uphills, downhills, everything. So he just gets faster every week. And it's just like, damn.
Does he make you sweat just watching him run?
Yeah. I mean, he comes across the finish line, barely breathing hard, a little bit of sweat, but I'm like, I'd be falling down. Somebody had to save me at the finish line. Yeah. I'm not a runner. Never have been. So
no. Running is something I learned to like for a little bit and then learned to despise after I ran my second half marathon and my foot went to sleep and it was like picking up like a crater for like the last 3 miles of the race.
It's like, this is not normal. Am I okay?
Yeah. I gave that up and decided that at that point in time, I needed to go to a bike and then went convincing the wife we needed a Peloton. And here we are. Got a Peloton. We're good.
Usually it's the other way around. The wife convinces the man that they need something and let's go get it. And they're like, do we really need this? Because, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we decided that we wouldn't do Christmas gifts that year if we got a Peloton. So, had to get ahead of the game.
Yeah. So that's what generally happens now. And then also my wife and I have agreed that we're not going to buy each other cards, like greeting cards, birthday cards, whatever, because all it is throwing like $7-8 away on a piece of paper that just creates clutter in our house, which we're trying to reduce,
And you end up throwing them away pretty quickly after.
Yeah, they just sit around and they clutter up a shelf or a bookcase or whatever.
Could be a good fire starter.
Good fire starter. If we're trying to reduce electricity costs, we'll just start a little fire.
Yeah, Well, we just got a solo stove. It showed up today on Mother's Day, and it wasn't even a Mother's Day gift, but we got those flameless or smokeless outdoor fire pits. And so we're super pumped. We've been hanging out on the back porch for about an hour and a half each night, just kind of hanging out. It's been super amazing. And our citronella candles are getting low. So time to really roast those mosquitoes now.
Yeah, really turn up the heat. And yeah, you got a nice area out back, the covered patio and kind of the trees along the back. So that'd be nice.
Yeah.
And you got some free wood.
Yeah, I did
from the recent tornado.
Yeah, I got free wood. I got a brand new part of my fence. It was awesome. Not
silver linings, right?
Silver linings. That my insurance premium probably went up 10%.
Same here. Yeah. Roof damage, but still waiting to get that repaired. But the insurance company just finally decided to investigate the claim. So
yeah. So we've been chatting about this, that, and the other, but today we're going to be talking about this, that, and the other, because we're going to be talking about one of Scott's favorites. And no, we're not talking JTS Brown. We're talking a little bit of gin. Now, I don't know much about gin, to be completely honest with you. Dr. Google and I did some research, and we'll talk about what a gin is and what it isn't here momentarily. But Scott, as our resident gin drinker, what drew you to gin from the beginning to get started with this clear spirit?
Yeah, so I started drinking gin, I guess it was probably late in college. And really, it was a friend who was a bartender that introduced me to gin. He was trying to kind of expand his bar, his bar skills and how to make cocktails, things like that. And he would just say like, hey, come up here. I'm working at 9 p.m. tonight till close. Like, just come up here and try some new gins or try some new cocktails, whatever. So we just started like experimenting really. And it was just like kind of tasting through like what we do with whiskey. So it's just like, what's good, what's not. And after that, it was just kind of like, I kind of like this. Like, it's an easy to drink cocktail. It's an easy to drink, I don't typically drink it neat. But some gins you can, or on a cube or with a twist of lime or lemon. But yeah, it was just really experimentation. And I guess it's kind of like what I've done with whiskey, just experimenting, see what you like. If you don't like it, move on.
Yeah.
Somebody else might like it. Maybe you can make a recommendation. And now gin, back then, there wasn't a ton of gins. There was maybe like 2 handfuls that were uncommon bars, Tanqueray, Bombay Sapphire, Tanqueray 10, I think was new at that time. And then there was like Hendrix and a few others, like super crafty type gins.
Mm-hmm.
And, so just really experimenting. Now, gin's kind of seen a revitalization, I think, now that everybody's getting into distilling, and some people are trying to put products on the shelf before their whiskeys are done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting. The first gin that I had that I really enjoyed was actually at a bourbon distillery, Limestone Branch. And they provided their gin to us, and I absolutely loved it. Bowling and Birch. I thought it was one of the best gins I had. It was a corn based gin, I believe, right? So distilled very similar to whiskey and at a higher proof. I think it was like 100, 103. I don't know. It was just higher proof gin, and I really enjoyed it. It was citrusy. I took it to the pool that day, like when I got to Bowling Green on a trip, and I was like, oh man, this is doable, because a lot of people think of gin and they think of that Christmas tree, right? I'm going to go drink evergreen pine. And that's not what gin is anymore, I don't believe, for the common person. So let me ask you this question before we get into like the technicalities of gin. What's your favorite gin? We have a variety of different things in front of us tonight, but what's your favorite gin that you would just go pick up, on the bar or at the liquor store?
Yeah, most common, I pick up Bombay Sapphire. That's probably the most traditional type gin for me. But then if I'm just looking for something a little bit different, usually go to Hendrix. And now, what I said earlier about Hendrix being a craft gin, Hendrix is part of one of the largest spirits, conglomerates in the world. So it's hard to say that it's craft now, but in terms of just being different, Hendrick's and tonic with the cucumber it's probably tops in terms of cocktails that I make.
Yeah. I really liked Tanqueray the first time I had it. Just Tanqueray and club soda. I was doing an orange. I liked the citrusy. Everyone else was doing lime or cucumber. But I liked the orange in it. We were on a Bella Louisville cruise, and they were doing moonshine from one of our least favorite distilleries. We won't name names about that. And so those weren't good, and we just went right to the cash bar and started drinking gin and club soda.
Yeah, gin, club soda, sugar, or simple syrup, and lemon is just Tom Collins. So that's very traditional drink, kind of like a gin and tonic. If you want to go more lemon, citrus heavy rather than lime and bitters.
Yeah. And they do gin highballs too, don't they?
I guess you could. I mean, gin's like one of the ultimate mixers, right? It's got flavors that you can enhance. It's got flavors that you can like cover up with other things.
Yeah.
Gin and tonic is kind of one of those cocktails that's super balanced
for everybody. Everyone.
It's got a little sweetness from the tonic water, from the lime, a little bit bitterness from the quinine, and then also like the lime also provides some bitterness.
Yeah.
And then you've got the botanicals from the gin.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. And so we've been saying this word gin, a lot of times we're not talking about a girl. We're talking about actual liquor, Gin. And so what is gin, right? What's the basic ingredient or what makes gin? So it's got to be a neutral grain spirit. Gin is made using clear, neutral spirit made from a distilling grain such as rye, barley, wheat, or corn. Juniper berries has to be the predominant, flavor in them, and then other botanicals. So pretty simple to make a gin. You commonly go to a distillery and hear the term gin basket, and that's the way they introduce those flavors into the making of gin. I about said whiskey making process because I'm so used to saying that on our podcast. But this is fun. And if you're in Louisville, what I would really recommend, and I get no dollars for this, and nor does Scott, but go to Darling's. It's on Bardstown Road. It's a gin bar. And they make great gin drinks there, and they have a variety of gins from all over the place. Scott, me and you'll have to check it out this summer. But I went last month, and it was great. It was packed, like gnats to assholes, I think is what you always say. And but it was awesome. The drinks were good. I think each drink was like $10, $12. I mean, that's pretty fair for a cocktail. And it's right next to Noche, which is the Mexican barbecue place on Bardstown Road. So you can do a little Mexican barbecue and do Darlings. That's my Louisville food tip of the week, or drink tip of the week.
So the quote actually, I believe, originated as elbows to assholes, which means it is so packed in there that the only way to move around is, elbows to assholes.
I know, but I feel like you said gnats assholes one time, and I was like, what does that mean?
That's a tight fit.
Oh, yeah.
That works too.
It does. So in front of us, we're going to talk a little bit about these. Scott is our resident gin drinker, so please tell me if I uck up one of these, because I more than likely will. So we have Monk's Road, and this is a barrel-aged gin. Is that correct?
Yep. Bourbon barrel finished gin.
And then we have Rabbit Hole's Bespoke Gin, London Dry Gin finished in rye whiskey barrels.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Sourland Mountain out of New Jersey, brand new to the Bourbon Lens this weekend. So we thought we'd throw it in. This is aged in charred American oak barrels, no less than 6 months. And then shout out to our girl, Rachel, over at Buffalo Bourbon Babe, who works at Lockhouse Gin. She sent us over this barrel-aged gin as well. Scott's got the stats on that one.
Yeah, so that's Lockhouse. It's a limited release barreled gin, 90 proof. Distilled from grain again. And the color on this one, I mean, I'm just going to hold it up for you, but look how dark that is.
I know. It looks like bourbon.
It looks like straight up whiskey. And all these other ones just look like a pale yellow clear spirit.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to get to once we get down the line.
Yeah. And so I think in all honesty, it works to compare the first two that we talked about, the Monk's Road and the Rabbit Hole, because they are that more traditional clear, even though they are barrel finished. Both, one is finished in rye barrels, the other one's assuming bourbon barrels. You know, I remember when we sat down with Wally Dant, and one of the things we tried was the gin, and you were like, holy, this is good. I agree. This one, I think, is a super solid gin just right off the bat. And we're not going to walk through these all in super detail. But, you know, when you think of this one in our time with Wally, like, what made you draw towards this one?
It just packs a sweetness that you don't typically get from a gin, like a neat gin.
Mm-hmm.
Like typically the botanicals are, you got the bitter, like the anise flavor, coriander, things like that typically pack a punch. This one's kind of it's not one note, but it's got like vanilla sweetness to it, which you wouldn't typically expect in a gin. So this one I think really leans to, you can tell that it's been finished in something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to know that it's bourbon barrels, it's kind of why I'm getting that sweetness, that vanilla.
Well, and sometimes on gin, it there's like a weird like back finish part to it. It can be really drying. This one is, like you said, super sweet and almost like a doughy sweetness, and it gives you that traditional, like maybe bourbon-ish or whiskey-ish feel. But I think it's got that hint of citrus in there that's really nice, that I like. So it kind of balances for me. You know, I remember drinking this too, and I'm like, oh man, like this could be something that I could get down on. But the next one is the one I know I can get down on, is that Rabbit Hole London Dry or Bespoke finished in rye, because I think this one is one of the more unique rye whiskeys, unique gins I've ever drank, other than the other one I just sent you a sample of with that Spirit Works slow gin finished. And that one's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, the Bespoke Rabbit Hole gin, I think, really opened my eyes the first time I had ever tried it, because I was not really drinking a lot of rye then. And I didn't really understand what rye was as a flavor, not as a grain. I know what it is, but I didn't really know what rye whiskey did in a barrel. But once I tried this, I was like, okay, there's that rye grassiness that comes through, but it feels like it makes the gin thicker. And I think this one's probably the lowest of the four. Yeah, it is.
It's 80?
89.
Okay.
So the Monk's Road's 93, the others are 90, but this one, it just feels it's super easy to drink. Viscosity
is way up. I think the rye influences those typical gin notes too, right? Because there's a lot of crossover in those grains. From a like botanical, like juniper, I think that typical pine tree note, that pine sol is way up. Lemon, orange, pine sol note is huge in this. But the mouthfeel is big. And the finish is short, which I just really like how this one goes. It leans towards rye whiskey, which, you know, I'm a rye whiskey fan, just in general. So like it gives me those flavors and allows me to enjoy something a little bit different and refreshing. I think this one over ice or in a cocktail is perfect for summer.
Yeah. And I think that the viscosity is what helps that, right? It's not going to just get lost and get thin. Usually when you add water to some spirits, they just kind of break up and they just disappear. And this one just has a nice viscosity to it that I think holds up.
Yeah. I think this, of the two, I like them both. I think one's more of a fall gin, one more is a summer gin, if that makes any sense to anyone on this. I think the Monk's Road is more like a fall. I think it's just got more fall flavors. I think the Rabbit Hole Bespoke is more of that summer that I would pour over a rock or pour with some tonic water and, you know, squeeze a lime and be ready to go. Speaking of summer, right? Don't forget that this episode is brought to you by Manscaped. They have a new performance package 4.0 that has arrived, and it is game changing. It comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker for your ears and nose. Can't let those nose hairs get too out of whack. When they grow too long and you pull them, it makes your eyes water. This makes sure that that doesn't happen. And for something a little bit different, you also get the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Toner. You got to make sure your goodies are taken care of. It also comes with the Performance Boxer Briefs and a travel bag to hold your goodies. And if you are interested in this, now is the time to act. Use code BourbonLens at checkout for 20% off your product and free shipping. So Father's Day is right around the corner. You also have summer. Make sure that dad bod or your regular bod is taken care of. If you're trying to find a mate, you want to look good so you can get that date. So back to our regular scheduled programming as we continue our discussion on gin, diving into Sourland Mountain Spirits gin aged in charred American oak barrels out of New Jersey. So Scott, thinking of this, what is going on when you think of other cities, states like New Jersey randomly producing a gin? Does that kind of raise any flags for you, or just kind of like, hey, I'm an equal opportunity gin drinker?
I mean, traditionally, most of the gins I would drink were London dry gins. And now all these craft spirits makers are making their own gins, some of them to get product on the shelves for, the 2 to 3 years that they're waiting on their spirits to age. Other times some of them are just distilling other spirits, vodkas, gins, rums, everything. So I'm an equal opportunity. I think when it comes to like gin, I don't really think it's going to make much of a difference where it comes from, because gin now has such a wide lane to travel. You can do so many different things with gin. So if somebody's doing something interesting and it tastes good, I'm willing to try it.
I think this may be the bourbon drinker's gin. There's caramel, there's vanilla, there's the typical gin notes to it. But this one smells good. It's a little perfumey, like some bouquet of whiskeys can be. But I think it has like some caramel vanilla notes that a whiskey drinker could get behind.
Wow. Yeah. It's definitely got, wow.
That shocked me.
I thought Monk's Road was sweet, but that's a little wild. It's not super botanical.
Mm-mm.
I mean, it does have that perfumey note, but not like grandma's perfume, just like fragrant, like fresh.
Yeah. Do you get like almost blueberry on this? Like that's not a note I would like randomly call out, but like blueberry Pop-Tarts.
Interesting.
Like on the finish.
I mean, I'm wondering if that could be coming from like some of the botanicals they're using. If they're using juniper is a type of berry that grows on a particular type of tree, but I'm wondering if you're getting some of that.
I don't know. I like this one. It's fresh.
And also like you can use dried botanicals versus like fresh botanicals. So I'm not sure if maybe that's making some difference too.
Yeah.
Where you're like steeping a tea, like you're reconstituting the dried tea leaves versus if you had like fresh tea, which I don't know if that exists, but something like fresh botanicals right into the gin basket. But
this one's just super unique and different from the other two that we previously had. But I think this one has hugely benefited from the oak barrels. And so they tell you that this is no less than 6 months aged. So like that's a decently long aging process for a clear spirit. And it's really interesting. We're about to pull this lockhouse out and it is even darker. So like I would wonder, right? Like, and we'll probably get some details on this from Rachel before we put this podcast out, like how long are they putting this in here? Because it is super interesting. And super dark. I haven't smelled it or tasted it yet because you told me I needed to like watch out for it. But I'm definitely interested to see how that goes against that Sourland that's been in the barrel for at least 6 months.
Yeah, I cheated and tried the Lockhouse previously when it first arrived because I was just too curious. I've been very curious about that, and Rachel was generous enough to get us a bottle, and I was excited to try it because gin's my thing too.
Oh.
But
like no shit, I think I have the fragrance of that gin as a cologne
of the Lockhouse.
Yeah. No, like I like it. It's just like it kind of was like what hit me was like, you used to walk through like Macy's or Dillard's or whatever, and like somebody would like hit the bottle one too many times and you would just like hit it. I wasn't ready for the perfuminess of this one. It's good. It just kind of took my breath away.
It's intense.
Like not in a bad way, but like this is like a gin that like wakes you up. But don't you think it's super fragrant, perfumey?
Yeah, going from Sourland, which I'm glad we did this in this order because the Sourland was like, hey, wake up. And this one's like, you better be awake because here it is. Boom.
You missed the boat if you didn't wake up on Sourland. You're definitely awake now.
Yeah, but this one is big time like lavender.
I wanted to say potpourri, but lavender is even more spot on. Like we have the Dr. Teal's stuff for like Epsom salt and to go to sleep and make your muscles feel all good. It kind of smells like that.
I remember Rachel saying that lavender is definitely in this mix. And I think that's what they're seeking out is that note. But how they got it this dark, I have no clue.
Well, it's so crazy that the lavender, like that. I'm so glad that you told me the note because I was like, I've smelled this before, but I've had lavender tea too. So that also reminds me of that. But the citrusiness, like after the second or third drink, shows up too. So like while that lavender is a huge note, the citrus notes are underlying and nice as well. That's super unique. What I like about all four of these, none of them are the same. You can line up a lot of whiskeys and four of them will be similar.
Yeah.
This is gin 4 different ways.
It is. And it's a progressive tasting.
It is.
Sure.
I feel like a lot of people would have fun with this type of tasting.
This Lockhouse, like it's kind of like effervescent. Like after you drink it, it's like still on your tongue, but it's not like a finish. It's like it's still working. Like it's popping.
Yeah. It's like you can just like let it hang out and you can breathe in and out. And like those flavors get intense and less intense, less intense as it puts air on it. Like this was a lot of fun. Like we don't do a lot of random spirits often, right? We've done, single malts and, we've stayed in that bourbon whiskey lane, but like
we try to stay in our lane.
Yeah. This is fun. Like this is really unique.
Well, I think that, several of the distilleries we've been to in the past couple of years, they all have like a gin. And they all want you to try it because they're like, it is our whiskey mash. They just distill it higher. So it becomes a neutral grain spirit. And that's to a higher proof when I mean higher. But they distill the mash higher and then they redistill it. Or I think, I don't know what the method is, but that's when they use the gin basket.
Yeah. This is it's so overwhelmingly fun to do something like this. Like this is just really interesting to me. I really enjoyed these all. So Scott, thanks for providing these, and thanks Monk's Road. I believe they gave that to us for free back in the day. Thank you, Sourland Mountain Spirits. And thank you, Lockhouse and Rachel. That's awesome. I think you bought the bespoke from a long, long time ago.
Yeah, it's been on my bar for a while. So
But this is fun. Like I'm so glad we got to venture into your world, Scott, to draw some gin tonight.
Welcome to my world. And I've admittedly, I don't drink as much gin now because there's no way I could drink whiskey and drink the same amount of gin as I ever used to. So,
I mean, there's a way. It's called alcoholism.
Yeah, and I'm not on that path. So I had to make some cuts in my life, and one of them was gin, unless it's winter, which gin is my winter spirit. It's not a summer spirit for me, despite what most people say.
Happy holidays, right?
Well, people say it tastes like Christmas trees, and I've always tried to dispel that a little bit, but I think these are 4 gins that would definitely
dispel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for the whiskey drinker.
Yeah. These are all interesting. If you are interested in any of these, you can go pick up Monk's Road and Rabbit Hole, pretty widely available. The Sourland Mountain and the Lock House are probably more regional, but definitely let us know if you're interested. We can get you the right people to have those conversations. And I can't believe it, but summer is here. And I'm super excited about what we have in store for summer and all those things that will be coming up. And pools will be opening very soon, so we'll have to go make a cannonball at our local pool, probably my parents, and not too far away. Well, thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Bourbon Lens. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Manscaped, for the opportunity to partner on this episode. Again, you can go to manscaped.com, use code BourbonLens at checkout, and that will get you 20% off your items and free shipping to your house. As always, please rate us, give us a 5-star review of your favorite podcast listening app. We would greatly appreciate it. You can go over to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok and check out Bourbon Lens for all of our information, what we're doing, where we're going, how we're doing it. And lastly, if you want those exclusive opportunities, go over to patreon.com/Bourbon Lens, and you can get exclusive access to a lot of cool things that we have coming up. And one of those things that will be out and about here shortly, there will be a few bottles left by the time this episode hits. Go check out our Broken Barrel Rare Americana Straight American Whiskey finished in Sauternes at 120 proof, will be available at sharedpour.com. You can also get a bundled package with our Starlight VDN. So go over there to sharedpour.com and check out our new barrel pick that will have launched by the time this episode drops. Until next time, cheers.
Cheers.